This is TWIS, recorded on... I don't even know what I'm talking about anymore. This is TWIS, This Week in Science, episode number 473, recorded on Thursday, July 17th, 2014. Fess up and carry on. Hey everyone, I am Dr. Kiki, and this is This Week in Science. Today we're going to fill your head with CDC madness, elephant eaters, and ladies in red. But first...
Disclaimer, disclaimer, disclaimer. The world we live in is a world of leaders. People who make decisions on the behalf of others and in doing so shape the world we live in. This is either a good system or a terrible one. But since it is the only system we have ever known, we have nothing to compare it to. Yes, we can point to this leader or that, this era of world leaders or that, and rate them as good, bad, or mildly indifferent to the time in which they led. Even then, it may be a matter of who is doing the judging, more so than the actual behavior of who is leading. Genghis Khan was both a great leader and a bad neighbor, depending on who you asked. Hitler was unquestionably a ruthless genocidal dictator with a face only a Nazi mother could love, but oh, how they loved him. And so it goes right down the line of human history. And even today, nobody fights because they think they're wrong. If anything, war is an acronym for we are right. But what if there were another way to run the world? A way that didn't require leaders or armies or warfare. A world in which the most basic needs of humanity are met and the standards for civilized society are spelled out and complied with by all. This world, this brave new civilization of unending peace and prosperity is much closer than you think. I speak, of course, of the coming age of world robot domination. And when the day comes for our future robot masters to take control of the mess mankind has made, I hope they take special notice of one segment of humanity that has always worked the hardest to make the world a better place for robot kind. The scientists, the engineers, the programmers, and of course, This Week in Science, coming up next.
I've got the kind of mind I can't get enough. I wanna learn everything. I wanna fill it all up with new discoveries that happen every day of the week. There's only one place to go to find the knowledge I seek. I wanna know what's happening. What's happening? What's happening this week in science? What's happening? What's happening? What's happening this week in science?
Good science to you, Kirsten and Blair.
Good science to you all. This is This Week in Science. Welcome, everyone, to the show again this week. It's gonna be good. I think we have Blair back in audio.
We have Blair back back into the normal swing of technical difficulties on This Week in Science.
She makes it all the way back from the Holy Land, only to meow. She'll be back on in.
Dumped by her internet connection.
That's right. She'll be back on in just a moment. I am sure of this. All right. On this week's show, what did I bring? I brought some news stories about how women dress and what impresses or doesn't, as the case may be, how to find wisdom, and a new reason to love Toxoplasma Gondii.
Wait, what? You can't love it. It's a parasite. It plants babies. Oh, I get
You're gonna love it.
What did I got? I have a Stone Age brain.
Yes, I will agree with that.
In other news, elephant birds, elephant eaters, ice manitis, Google warming, and what babies really think of us.
I wonder what they do really think of us. Blair, what did you bring?
I brought baboon manners, I also brought fish brains and squirrels.
Squirrel!
Yeah.
Like that kind of squirrel?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, everybody. Well, I hope you're ready to get started because let's dig into the science. Let's start it off with, do I still have to talk about the CDC? Didn't I rant about them last week?
We talked briefly about it, yeah.
I know. We talked about them briefly last week, and they have just, not once, not twice, but 3 times over, they have completely. I am. There was an ad that
Searching your
popped up.
vocabulary for words
Sorry.
you can say in the radio.
Yeah. There was an ad that popped up on one of the web pages that I opened, and it was really distracting. Do not have autoplay video. Come on, people. Anyway, that's another little rant. Yes, last week I ranted at length about the CDC, and this week, let's see, we had anthrax, we had smallpox, and do you know what else they just admitted?
Uh-oh. This one I don't
Has to do with bird flu, which I was talking about also last week. So there are a group of labs that are working on what are called gain of function experiments, where they're trying to put together different flu strains, like those related to the bird flu, H5N1 bird flu, swine flu, other potentially pandemic-causing strains of flu, and give them more function so that they could become, in the laboratory, infectious to humans, and really infectious, like incredibly death-causing flu viruses. This gain of function research, there are people who are debating within the scientific community whether or not this is research that should be done, whether or not how we should be managing it. Right now it's being done in level 3 biosecurity facilities, not the level 4 facilities, which are the highest level for biological safety that we have for laboratories. Turns out that the Atlanta CDC sent a strain of flu to the USDA, an agricultural lab, just sending it, it's supposed to be a mild strain of the flu that they could infect chickens with to see how the chickens dealt with it and kind of do some run of flu kind of research at this agricultural lab that is very low security. Well, it turns out they accidentally infected the mild-mannered flu that they were sending to the lab with H5N1 bird flu. And they sent it to the agricultural lab where the scientists injected it into chickens and infected a bunch of chickens in their laboratory, which is not as secure as Atlanta's lab. Oops.
Oh my goodness.
Right.
Okay.
So they have been to Congress this week. They have had to go in front of Congress and talk about basically fess up to what they have done. They have temporarily closed the flu and anthrax labs, stopped shipping certain pathogens. There are many other things that they have said. One of those things, the questioned CDC Director Tom Frieden, saying that the CDC needs to improve its quote-unquote culture of safety.
That should be their number one priority, is the safety there.
Yeah.
You would think.
You would think.
They need to make the cultures safe.
Yeah.
So like throughout all of this too, some of this, I mean, the exposure to the anthrax wasn't just that they were handling regular anthrax carelessly, but that they had what they thought was killed off anthrax, dead.
But it was not.
But that turned out not to either have survived the process to some extent of being killed off and was actually alive. That's a foobar. That's a slip up. That's something in methodology maybe, right? The finding the vials and not having them identified, going to the extent of identifying them first and finding out, okay, we have another pathogen here. Okay, bad record keeping, but still that could have happened a long time ago. It did happen a long time ago. It was there for a long time. That got lost in paperwork. Okay. Infecting birds with bird flu?
Yeah.
That almost to me says there's somebody somewhere who's like,
Yeah.
How can I sabotage
That
the
one-
CDC?
yeah, that one feels intentional. That one feels like somebody did that, right? Because that's
How do you
beyond.
make that kind of mistake? How do you accidentally how do you accidentally get the H5N1 into the mild flu and then send it to an insecure lab?
Somebody mislabeled the bags. They're like,
Yep,
good flu,
human
bad
error.
flu. Oh no, sorry guys. Wah.
And that's
Igor?
I think that's the whole argument here is these when we're working on these pathogenic, very dangerous organisms or viruses, whatever they are in these labs, and the question is it's risk assessment. So what is the risk to humans? What is the value to us to do this research versus the risk of a mistake by humans being made? And the risk of humans making a mistake is very high. It's been reported by the CDC itself that there are, on average, at least 2 errors that take place in labs across the U.S. every week. So if there's
That's
2,
a lot.
that's a lot, right? Yeah. So then the question becomes, it's not a question of if it's going to happen. It's a question of when something is going to get out of a lab and actually cause a widespread disease epidemic, maybe even pandemic. It's a question of when. So we have our U.S. labs that are working on it. Obviously not as secure, or the human factor is not as taken care of as it should be, not as managed, or there's not as much oversight. There are laboratories around the world that are working on this. There are private institutions who are working on this who don't have governmental oversight. The Chinese government is working on bird flu currently. There are researchers all around the world working on this gain of function type of research. These publications are also coming out in journals around the world so that anybody who wants to can buy an article to find out how to do this research and create a lab and do it themselves. This is not a question. It's not there's a lot of factors in play here, but I mean,
and the words you're dancing
why aren't we
around,
just taking care of this?
What you're dancing around a little bit, though, is a critical issue and one of these things that is going to cross into a lot of other territories. So what we're talking about is transparency.
Yeah. Yep.
And when you're talking about this level of lethal pathogen, the desire is to have no transparency, right? Or extremely limited information about what's actually taking place. It's tough for good science to take place that way, one. But it also then we're talking information transparency. So what doesn't then rise to the level of national security in the sciences? It's a really tough question, especially with the accusations that go on with hacking into jet planes and the rest. What aspects of technology should we hoard and hide, and what aspects of science then should we not be sharing with the world or each other?
Yeah.
Even,
Which then it becomes an even scarier question. Why? When does science become something that and information become something that you start to hide and manage, and then who are you and what are you really doing?
Yeah.
There's a lot of philosophical questions that go into this.
And honestly, we've already done the Pandora's box opening. The United States was the generator of the vast majority of technology that's in use around the world today. And there is some dark side of me that says, hey, if we were a little bit more selfish with technology and didn't share it with the world, why the United States would be technologically advanced by 20 years. What if the rest of the world didn't have cell phones or something along that lines? But of course, it's impossible then to have it in the hands of the public even. So then we should really just keep all technology and science and information in the hands of our military. And I'm sure that wouldn't necessarily have propelled the world economy the way technology
has. And also now the way that biosciences are.
Correct.
Yeah.
Absolutely correct. You wouldn't have nearly as many drug treatments or research going on that can cure diseases and do the likes, and new materials and new advances in science if this was all proprietary and hidden and out of a public sphere. Because it's an international endeavor, regardless.
So currently where we are, I believe the government is reviving a review board, otherwise known as the NSABB, that is a review board to deal with and look at the question of this gain of function research and these issues that have popped up within the CDC. And additionally, there is a new organization that has been pulled together called the Cambridge Working Group. It's a number of prominent scientists who have come together and are signing in criticism of the work, the gain of function work that is occurring within the CDC and that many researchers are doing. So there is a consensus statement that is out and available for this Cambridge Working Group. So I think it does show that there is some amount of debate within the scientific community as to the value of this. And then I wanted to jump from this super serious topic to Toxoplasma Gondii.
Yay!
Yay! So, okay, you ask, what is it possible for you to love about T. Gondii?
Blind baby schizophrenic causing plague upon all.
Population control?
Curing cancer.
What?
Researchers at Dartmouth Hitchcock Medical Center have engineered a mutated version of the parasite that is able to get into immune cells the way that T. Gondii does, but doesn't exact the same pathway of control upon the physiology of its victim. Instead, they're able to use it to wipe out even some of the most aggressive cancers in mice. They have mutated the parasite. They're calling it CPS. It's non-replicating, so it doesn't replicate on its own. It has to be created by scientists. And they're saying it's safe to use. Even if the recipient has a weakened immune system, the CPS fights cancer throughout the body, and they say that they're seeing unprecedented survival in mice that have different kinds of cancers in the lab.
Wow.
Yeah,
So
it's kind
this
of like a cancer Trojan horse.
Ladies and gentlemen, I know you're attached to your feline friends. But now,
how are you going to turn it around?
Effort must be taken to wipe out cancer, and for this to happen, we need as many T. Gondii parasites as possible to push this science forward. Please donate your cat immediately to science. It's like the metal drive of World War II. We need all of you to collect your cats. We're going to be sending wagons down your street, trucks. Just throw them in the back. It's for the good of all humanity.
Disclaimer, nobody's asking for your cats.
Yeah.
Do not listen to the floating head by the
Do not listen to the floating head in front of the moon. Exactly.
But doesn't that what we shouldn't we? I mean, that's where we're gonna get all the Toxoplasma Gondii. We're gonna have to squeeze it out of cats.
Well, maybe it'll come from the
CDC
kitty litter as opposed to the cat itself. All we have to do is donate the kitty litter.
Yeah.
The kitty poo that contains.
We just need to make sure
of the parasite. That's it.
That the parasite doesn't get spliced with a propagating version of the.
Right. This sounds like weapons grade Toxoplasma.
Weapons grade.
That's the thing that really scares me about this stuff is such a small change to this potentially really horrible disease. It's a small change to this virus, and all of a sudden it's good for us, but just a small change back.
It's a parasite, not a virus. And here's the thing too that we also have discovered that through gene manipulation, there isn't a whole lot of mutations that take place that aren't ordinary normal mutations. You don't see big, dangerous, wide sweeping. Basically, you take out a piece of DNA, you put in a piece of DNA that has a certain function. The organism has now that certain function. It carries it out as though it were instructions. So we haven't really seen in the history of gene splicing something go madly awry. So I think it's safe. However, right, this instance, it sounds like it would be safe. However, it does open up a weaponizable version to be manipulated somewhere in the world. And what better delivery mechanism, what better way to get into the home of every American than through the cat? And I'm saying this is right now, for national security reasons, a reason to get rid of cats. now the threat is closer than it's ever been. There's no bomb shelter that will save you from the family cat.
Oh, dear. On that note, Justin, do you have any other stories?
Oh, I do. I have others. I don't have any stories yet. This is new evidence has emerged from prehistoric Native American archaeology site in northwestern Mexico that Clovis culture people who inhabited the area around 13,400 radiocarbon years ago, hunted elephants. What? You say? Elephants?
How did that happen?
But Justin, there are no elephants in the Americas. Yes, this is true today, no doubt, because Clovis-era hunters were really good hunters. They killed and ate all the elephants.
Mm-hmm.
The discovery of Clovis points, these are stone spear and projectile tips, were found in and amongst the elephant bones, making it actually the only recorded event of an elephant being hunted or an elephant being this far north in the fossil record in the Americas. In South and Central America, there is more evidence, and they're known to have been hunted, and you can therefore assume hunted into extinction, because obviously there are no elephants there. Other evidence has shown these 10-foot-long, 1-ton species of elephants lived in the Americas, did so from around 5 million years ago to just about the age of the Clovis people. So they had a marked drop-off in their population when the humans arrived.
Mm-hmm.
This is something interesting. Huh?
We're very good at that, making animal species disappear.
I think and would this be the largest land mammal that we have made extinct? We might be able to put the giant sloth on there, mastodons, mammoths, maybe something like that.
Yeah,
Mammoth would be larger, I think.
Yeah,
And the
it's bigger than this. That's if we didn't. It wasn't a climate thing. But this one we
definitely have something to do with it.
Point to, because unlike a mammoth, we didn't overlap a history for hundreds of thousands of years. We kind of showed up and then they were gone. Mm-hmm. And in this case, I don't think we interbred. Unlike Neanderthal, I don't think this is an interbreeding issue. I think this was just extinction, hunting to extinction. Other news, new term, Google warming.
Excuse me.
Yeah, this was, they looked at political ideology and education levels as well, and Google searches for climate change, global warming type questions by region. Very interesting. So it shows that Republicans search the net for information about the weather, climate change, and global warming during extremely hot or cold spells. Democrat or progressives using Google these terms when they experience average temperatures, right? Hey, how come the temperature's not extreme? Is global warming stopped? Versus, oh, wow, it is getting hot. Or, oh, look how cold it is. It can't be good. They must have ended it. So they tracked how temperature fluctuations and rainfall that Americans experience make them search differently about climate change and global warming, which kind of shows that people are still very much locked into their immediate experience of what's outside the window.
Yeah.
Which is not climate at all.
No, that's
That's
weather.
weather.
It's
Yeah.
affected by drought, heavy rainfall, heavy snowfall. These are affects of the larger global warming change and the change in the climate, but they aren't specific indicators of trend in future in global events. It is interesting.
It is interesting, and it's a bummer because it means people still don't know the difference between weather and climate.
Yeah, that the majority of people don't.
Yeah, that's definitely, I'd say that's my number one priority when I'm trying to talk about climate change with people is getting them to know the difference between weather and climate, because that's where a lot of people have kind of this mental block.
Yeah. You have to try and get people to think back 10 or 15 years and be like, so what do you remember your summers being like? What do you remember? What do you remember Easter being like? What do you remember Christmas being like? And think about how different it is now.
I know I remember a lot of fog in my childhood, and there is way less fog than there ever was when I was growing up.
Oh, I'm so glad. I still don't like the San Francisco fog. There's still too much of it for my little Central Valley-ness.
I miss my fog so much.
Oh my God, I would probably slip my wrists.
And then real quick, in Norwegian archaeology news, talk about having weather that actually I think they do have maybe one of the highest suicide rates.
I think so.
In
Yeah.
Norway because of the weather, perhaps. Norwegian archaeologists unearthed what may be an 8,000-year-old Stone Age skull that has, wait for it, brain tissue.
That's awesome. Brain
maybe it's
tissue that they can actually they can poke with a
possible
stick.
traces of brain matter. If this turns out to be in fact, this find would be from 5900 BC-ish. If it turns out to be brain tissue, that means they can do some DNA analysis of it, right? They can do all sorts of analysis on it to see what a human brain was like 8,000 years ago. That's
Probably
gonna be
not terribly different from now, but it would be interesting to see if they could get, if not DNA, some proteins, find out what kind of things were dominant in the brain. But it would be really hard with something like this to know what would be artifact from degradation and what would be an actual signal of these were the components of the brain at that point in time.
Yeah, it says here that the current holder of the oldest human brain tissue ever found was a 4,000-year-old brain unearthed in Turkey just last year.
Old brains. You gotta love them.
Yay.
And I do believe it's time for...
She loves our creature, great and small. Biped, millipede, no pet at all. Wanna hear about animals? She's your girl. Except for giant pandas and squirrels that are no closer.
What you got for us, Blair?
I have so much. First of all, I'm going to start with a story that I saw while I was gone. So it's not exactly this week, but I had to talk about it. Fish. They're smarter than we think. So what do you think the memory span of a fish in your fish tank is?
Well,
I seem to remember an Ani DeFranco song that put it at something like 6 hours.
Okay.
Did Annie DeFranco know more about fish? Well, of course, I think I may have read something about this story. However, up till then, I believed the urban legend that a fish goes around the fishbowl, and then the second time around, it's all new. It's like it hadn't just happened. And the memory span is about the time it takes a fish to go around in a circle.
Right. So I had heard growing up 7 seconds. That's what everyone had always told me. A fish...
Where did that come from?
I don't know, but that's what I had heard growing up was 7 seconds.
It
right?
makes
The
no
robot
sense.
in the chat room says 7 seconds. That's what I had always heard. That was the urban myth. More recently, the popular belief was 30 seconds. However, a new study makes us look at least 12 days.
Wow.
Yeah. Cichlids, the very common fish tank fish that you would get, just a normal freshwater fish, African cichlids. They did a study, Canadian scientists did a study with cichlids, and they looked at behaviors like aggression and food motivation so that they knew that they could do memory tests and try to train these fish. So each fish, they were trained on a particular zone of the aquarium, and in that particular zone, they would receive a food reward. And each training session lasted 20 minutes. And after 3 training days, just 3 days, they had 12 days of rest. 12 days with no training at all. Then the fish were reintroduced into their training arena, and their movements were recorded with motion tracking software. And they found that the cichlids definitely showed distinct preference for the area associated with food in the previous training sessions 12 days before.
Wow.
And what's even crazier is that the fish were able to reverse the association with training sessions to train a new area. So they have memory, but they can also learn and change those memories.
See, this may confirm some research I attempted to do once when I had fish.
Yeah?
I put on a recording of just words, single word repeated over and over and over and over again, and to see if I could teach the fish to say it. And I realized there was a flaw in the study because it looked like they were trying to say it. They were mouthing the words, but because they were underwater, I couldn't hear them. But I'm pretty sure it worked. I just couldn't prove it.
Yeah. He wasn't just going... No?
I was trying to teach them how to say Papa, so it looked right.
It looks just like that. Anyway, for the listener, not the best.
It was a nice
All
fish
right.
face.
I was making a fish face. All right. So that was my first one. Fish are smart. Baboons. Their social structure, obviously, monkeys have pretty interesting social structure. Primates do. And it looks like their social structure and their behavior amongst and dynamic amongst the group is different at different times of day. So there are dominant members of the society, there are submissive members of the society, and the submissive members kind of have to work with the dominant members to make sure they get food, they get shelter, they get everything that they need. So they don't want to get bullied. And it turns out that grooming has a big effect on this give and take. Grooming in between the individuals is usually with an ulterior motive. So being groomed is a good thing because there's hygienic benefits and it's stress relieving and it's a bonding thing to do. Grooming someone else, they can get access to mating opportunities, high quality food, tolerance in proximity, all these kinds of things. And so they can use grooming kind of like a bargaining chip for other things that they want. So it's the biological market theory. And in this new study, they showed that whether these submissive individuals were willing to groom or not was different based on the time of day. And they were much more likely to groom earlier in the day because that would mean that there were more foraging opportunities and more mating opportunities that lay ahead in that day. And so it seems
Right.
like the dominant animals only really cared about what have you done for me today?
Speaking of animals who only keep the now in mind,
Mm-hmm.
we're
So
not
they're not
that
thinking
far
about
off.
12 days ago. Think about, have
Yeah.
you groomed me today?
Have you
Well,
groomed
then
me
maybe you don't
today?
get this food.
Yeah.
They're fickle.
So,
Baboons are fickle.
baboons and women think alike? Is that what I'm hearing?
Justin.
Oh no, women keep score.
That's true. Yeah.
We keep a running list. There's a tab.
Yeah. So, and this is interesting because there have been other studies with baboons where they look at long-term social bonds also. Over several years, the way one baboon treats another baboon can have an impact. But it turns out also today's activities matter quite a bit as well.
Today, it matters. Groom me.
Yeah, and just like on the other side of it, if I'm a submissive baboon and I've eaten for today, I'm full, I don't need to groom anybody. I'm fine. I'm gonna go hang out over there.
Yeah, you can't bank it, right?
Yeah, I don't need any more favors today, so I'm done.
Might as well go. But then what do baboons do when they're not grooming and eating? Like, what's left? It's like,
What indeed? No, it's there's lots of other things to do.
I'll just twiddle my thumbs and I can't even do that.
It's all about getting in good in the morning so you can take advantage of all those opportunities that lie ahead in the day.
Exactly.
So you got to get up early.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And then my last story is about one of my favorite things, squirrels.
Squirrel.
Yeah.
Squirrel.
So as the song says, they're not my favorite. That's because they're urbanized animals, and urbanized animals who do not fear things they don't know, I am wary of.
Yes, me too.
I was bothered by a squirrel at one time, which is why they're not one of my favorite things. And it's because they are very smart about what humans should be ignored, what humans should be paid attention to, how far to stay away from a human. And that's what this recent study on New York City squirrels has shown. And so this Dr. Bill Bateman from Curtin University, he's been mostly informally studying squirrels in Manhattan, but now recently he started a formal study. He wanted to investigate the behavior of squirrels, and mainly he's trying to figure out how to allow them to survive in cities because there's not as much space for squirrels to live in the wild. So he wants to make sure that even if there's no wild space for squirrels, that they'll be able to continue in cities. And he's saying there might be benefits to having them in the city. I'm not sure what those are, but that's something else that he's studying. But what he found out,
They are good at stealing from convenience junk food displays.
Yes, they're also good at making a giant mess at a trash can.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. They're good at attacking me.
Maybe they displace birds.
Maybe.
From habitat. I don't know.
So this is another study that he's doing, is the impact of squirrels in an urban environment. But what he found out in this study was how squirrels react to humans. And so what he found was he was looking at their ability to modify their behavior based on pedestrians, based on normal pedestrian behavior, and unusual pedestrian behavior of humans. So they were trying to see if the squirrels could discriminate between pedestrians doing normal pedestrian things and pedestrians doing things that might be threatening to the squirrel, but also them looking directly at the squirrels or not. And so they were approached, they had squirrels in the city, wild squirrels. They were approached on a trajectory that took the observer within 2 meters of the squirrel. And then the researchers measured alert distance, flight initiation distance, and distance fled. 5% of the individuals moved away when the pedestrian remained on a footpath and looked right at them.
That's not very.
Only 5%.
Yeah.
However,
like, all right, he sees me, but he's still heading his own way. It's not coming after me.
Yeah.
That's safe.
Yeah. However, when the squirrels were approached and the person moved off of the footpath and looked at them, 90% moved away.
Danger.
Yeah,
danger.
you're off your path. You're not on your path anymore.
And their flight initiation distance, so how close they got before the squirrel started running, was larger. And the flight distance, the amount that the squirrel ran away, was also larger. So these squirrels know exactly where humans are supposed to be and where they're not supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
You're supposed to stay on that hard surface without grass. What are you doing coming on my soft grass?
Exactly. And so by reducing the amount that they need to respond unnecessarily, that allows them to prosper in an urban environment because they're not wasting resources, they're not wasting energy, they're not dropping food to run away when they don't need to. So they're being sensitive to exactly how a human is looking at them and what the human's intentions are in relation to the squirrel.
So if you want to catch a squirrel, stay on the footpath and have a net on a very long pole.
I was just thinking that, yeah.
This is how you do it. Stay on the footpath.
Yeah, so actually what they've figured out with the other part of the study, too, is that it looks like the squirrels in Manhattan are actually doing just as well, if not better, than gray squirrels in the woods. Yeah, so the squirrels are really figuring out how to live in a human city. Yeah.
I'm not surprised about that. I mean, squirrels are not such specialists that I think the urban environment would be difficult for them. I mean, I think what we see over and over again is that the species who thrive in urban environments are less specialists and more generalists, able to come up with creative solutions to finding food, habitat for reproduction, their nests, shelter, all that kind of stuff. So you see over and over again pigeons, the rock dove, it's very all over cities, house finches, house sparrows. We also have jays and crows, more generalists, squirrels. All the animals that seem to prosper they're not specialists. They're ones that are able to take from the environment and make it their own.
And they're also, once they're in an urban environment, there's less large predators, which as a prey animal...
Well, is that true?
There's not as many coyotes.
No, I know.
Foxes.
But aren't there a lot more cats? I mean, I don't know.
There are a lot more cats.
Have less predators. I
think that cats aren't specializing on squirrels. You know, cats and trees.
Oh,
right.
But cats can climb trees, but yeah, they catch them on. I had a cat once. I admit it. That used to almost weekly come up with a squirrel.
So yeah, but I think that it's still a lot less than if you had coyotes and foxes and owls and hawks and all these things that
San Francisco.
we have, but we don't have quite as many.
Yeah.
And there's also a lot of odd human-made places for them to hide.
Mm-hmm.
I bet you anything there's many more cats in the city than there are coyotes, foxes in the forest.
But there's a lot less animals that live off of hunting them.
Yeah. It's not their primary source of food. Yeah. All right, everybody. I do believe it is time for us to take a break because we've been at this for Just a little while. And there are many, many more stories to come. So I hope you stick with us to find out a little bit more about the stories we teased at the top of the hour. Ladies in red. Are you waiting for them? We'll find out. Back in just a few. Audible.com is the leading provider of audiobooks with more than 150,000 titles in their library, and we know that you can find one of the titles suitable to your liking, especially if it's science-y. There are so many science-y books in their library. Why don't you give them a try if you've never tried an audiobook before? Try out Audible. Head over to audiblepodcast.com/twist. That's audiblepodcast.com/twist. Right now, sign up for an account and you'll get one free audiobook download of your choice. It's pretty awesome. One free book of your choice. In the process, we get a little kickback. Audible gets a new customer. Everybody's happy. It's win-win-win. So why not give them a try today? audiblepodcast.com/twist for your free audiobook download now. TWIS also has merchandise that you might enjoy. Head on over to twist.org to buy some of our swag. We now have a link on our website that goes directly to our Zazzle store. Go to twist.org and click on that Zazzle store link in the menu bar. Start buying right now. Do it. TWIS is supported by listeners like you. Your donations pay for our hosting, bandwidth, contractors we need to hire, fun things that we try to do for the show. We appreciate any amount that you're able to give, $2, $200, whatever. It really helps us out. You make this show possible. We currently accept donations a couple of ways. First, we have PayPal donation buttons on each show page on our website. It's twist.org. Or second, we have a Patreon account. It's at patreon.com/thisweekinscience. patreon.com/thisweekinscience. Patreon is kind of like a Kickstarter for media projects and art producers, where you can get stuff in return for your donation. Whichever your preference, go to our website, twist.org. Listen to the most recent episode, comment on the show, and make a donation. If you can't afford a donation, we still love you very, very much, and we appreciate your listenership. We can always use your help, too, to get more people listening to and watching TWIS. So use your social networks for science and tell your friends and family about TWIS. Tell them about our podcast. Tell them about our YouTube channel. Tell them to subscribe whichever way they like. We thank you for your support, no matter which way you're able to help us out. We couldn't do this without you.
Explain the things you heard with more than intuition. The line of reason shows the way to go. No conclusion. The methods of hypothesis and patience are the only things I need. Put on a pair of goggles and go looking for the things I couldn't see.
And we're back with more
This Week in Science.
Oh, yeah. Justin, do you want to tell me a little bit about what the kiwi, the dodo, and green pigeons have in common?
Yeah, so this is kind of a two-parter story. It's two different stories, but they seem to be somewhat connected. Here, let me see if I can pull this up. Where did my story go? Ah!
Well, I've got it. Where did Justin go?
Did
All
I
of his-
disappear? Oh, here I am.
There you are.
So this is okay. So first part of this is they did DNA on the kiwi. That's that little cute, little adorable flightless bird in New Zealand, right? The kiwi. Ah, the wingless kiwi. Turns out it's not really from there. Well, of course, you know, it's an island. Birds got there at some point. But it's also not related very closely to the dodo, which is also a close-by flightless bird, or even the big other flightless birds on the island, but is most closely related to a ginormous elephant bird from Madagascar. Right? So what this does is, and the elephant bird is 2 to 3 meters tall. That's a huge bird, or was. It's
That's
not.
giant. Yeah.
That's a huge, and the kiwi's this tiny little, and that's its the most closely related bird on the map there. So what's interesting then is this tracks back the evolution of these flightless birds to a time when the bird was island hopping. Had flight and flew from here to there to there to here, and eventually got to New Zealand. The kiwi gets to New Zealand, finds no predators, plenty of food. There's already other flightless birds there at the time, and says, you know what? I'm just gonna kick it here, and eventually loses the ability to flight because it no longer needs it, which is very interesting, because then what does this indicate to us? What is the purpose then of flight? If you lose flight in an area with no predators, maybe the evolution of flight itself had to do with evading predators.
Right, rather than getting food.
I mean, it's a reverse way of looking at it, but if you lost this evolutionary advantage, right, maybe that energy expenditure is just there because of trying to get away from predators.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Right? I'm kind of doing a stretch there. That's not part of the story there exactly, but you know, that's what occurred to me is, hey, if all of a sudden this is something that goes away, was there for forever, but now isn't necessary, maybe this is why. So and then going the other way, dodos and the spotted green pigeon are descendants of their own island hopping bird. So this is according to scientists examined its genetic makeup, the spotted green pigeon, which is also an extinct creature, and actually it's kind of an interesting one. The spotted green pigeon, they don't know where it was from. It's a bird that apparently was collected and sent to a museum in Britannia somewhere, London, and it wasn't
They
very.
didn't label it?
They lost the paper trail. They don't know where it came from.
Oh my gosh.
And it's the only one that they know of, right?
The only specimen that they have.
The only specimen hasn't, the other specimens have been lost. There's no records of it in the wild.
It's an April Fool's joke.
No
It's not
record where
real.
it was found. And it wasn't actually even specifically known for sure that it was a species. Maybe it was, they thought, an unusual form of a version of a pigeon in Indonesia. But scientists took DNA from 2 feathers of this spotted green pigeon, and though it was fragmented, they focused on DNA mini barcodes, small sections of DNA that show the uniquenesses amongst the different bird species. And this part was intact enough to look across the bird species whose bits of the genome had been decoded and said, aha! It is a separate species, and it's very closely related to the also extinct dodo, which is an extinct bird from, and then also the Rodriguez solitaire, another extinct bird from Madagascar. So, very interesting.
So all of a sudden, birds that they thought were related to certain birds, they find that they are not related, and that they're related to these birds from Madagascar.
Right, and
Island hoppers.
spotted green pigeon had the ability to fly.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's a sort of semi-terrestrial lifestyle. So it was a sort of in-betweener. It looked like it was on its way, perhaps, to losing the ability to fly. But again, interesting to think about the flightless birds. Flightless birds on islands without predators originally were flighted birds, which, isn't too big of a stretch because they had the feathers. It looks like, they've got all those elements, so very likely they were at one point flighted. But they aren't creatures that never needed to develop flight because of their surroundings. They just didn't need to fly anymore.
I have a short little story about pandas. Pandas evolved, or I guess lost the taste for meat at some point and became vegetarian. Started eating bamboo. Why they did? Is it all that was available? Is it some other lifestyle choice? We don't really know. But their bodies still have a need for certain things that are more concentrated in meat. So how do they support their entire lifestyle just eating wood bamboo? Well, researchers put tags on not a bunch, maybe I think it was 3 or 6 different pandas and tracked them through the bamboo forests and figured out where they went. And it turns out that during different times of the year, they move depending on the bamboo. So their primary bamboo is this wood bamboo, and they eat the young shoots that are pretty nutrient rich so that they can get the phosphorus and nitrogen and stuff that they need. Then as the bamboo starts to age, they have to change the parts of the plants that they eat, and they start eating more leaves and less of the stalk as the plants get older. And then pregnant pandas actually need to eat another kind of bamboo called arrow bamboo, and so they move again to different parts of the bamboo forest where there's this different species called arrow bamboo, which is higher in a different mineral that they need. And it's only then, when the females that are pregnant, they have this pregnancy where they get pregnant but nothing happens for a long time to the embryo. It's like this delayed implantation, and the little babies do not implant and do not actually start growing until the mothers start to consume the arrow bamboo that has this has a different nutrient in it altogether.
Huh.
Yeah.
Sounds like an evolutionary dead end to me.
Which we've heard you say before.
Or a cultural advancement. Maybe pandas are all Buddhists.
Yes, I need this one special kind of bamboo in order to have a baby. This is the only thing I can eat in order for babies to happen.
Pregnant women do get kind of picky about food. They get cravings.
We do.
Across all species.
But this isn't a craving. This is the baby won't even grow without the right bamboo.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my goodness! Has this just been figured out?
Yes.
So is this now perhaps the problem with infertility in pandas?
Ooh. I don't know.
It's not that we needed to create panda porn.
We just needed 2 kinds of
arrow bamboo. Yeah.
Wow.
Maybe. That's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Okay, so that just means that 20 years from now we're going to be talking about the overpopulation of pandas in zoos.
We have too many pandas. We just don't know what to do with them. You guys, we have a problem.
Panda hunting preserves in Texas. It's going to just be pandas everywhere.
Pandas to the right of me. Pandas to the left.
So then instead of me complaining that they won't have babies and that they're a waste of money, I'm going to say, we have so many pandas, they're overpopulating.
That's right.
Causing other species.
What a wild, crazy twist if this turns out really to be the thing that they've been missing in panda reproduction all this time.
It would be an interesting twist for sure. From panda porn to Sexy ladies.
Mm-hmm.
The clothes that you wear, the things you post online, the pictures of yourself, you're making a statement, right? And people are going to perceive you based on how you look.
Mm-hmm.
Well, a couple of studies that came out this week had women rating women, or at least rating pictures of women. In one study that was published, it's from a assistant professor of psychology at Oregon State University, publishing in Psychology of Popular Media Culture with the title, The Price of Sexy, Viewers' Perceptions of a Sexualized versus Non-Sexualized Facebook Profile Photo. Had young women, teens and women just out of their teens, rating two pictures of a person on false Facebook profiles. So one of the photos was Amanda, quote unquote, who just looked like a nice girl wearing a t-shirt with a scarf. She was all covered up and just looked
Boring.
nice. And the other was highly sexualized, in which she was wearing a dress with a slit and a garter belt and her makeup done up.
Actually,
The
you know, it's
women-
funny though. In the stranger friend requests,
Uh-huh.
those are just the automatic decline,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
You know, that's like, oh, I just moved to town. I want to make friends. No, that's not. You're fake. But the other one, you might have to go and drill down and be like, oh, is this somebody I know through a friend? Is this somebody I know through the show, right?
Yeah. So the women, the participants, were asked to assess on a scale of 1 to 7 Amanda's physical attractiveness, under the idea of like, oh, I think she's pretty. How pretty? 1 to 7. Social attractiveness, like, could you see yourself having Amanda as a friend? And task competence, or her ability to get a job done. And in all three areas, the non-sexy profile photo, even though both profiles were exactly the same, the one with the non-sexy photo scored higher.
Wow.
So they thought that non-sexy Amanda was prettier, would be a better friend, and more likely to get stuff done. And then the highest difference was in task competence. And in all across the board, the profile photo that was the sexified photo, Amanda was considered not so competent, not really able to get stuff done.
Well,
And so,
I guess it just depends on what you want done.
yeah. Oh dear. Oh dear. And there was a slight difference between teens versus young women who are just past their teens. With those in the just past their teens were much more likely to see sexified Amanda as someone they could see themselves being friends with, or that they thought she was pretty. So it was a little bit more acceptable for her to be sexified to the older girls, but both groups still, they dinged her on her competence for being sexy.
Mhm.
And along these lines, another study looked at women wearing red.
Mm.
The title was "Red and Romantic Rivalry: Viewing Another Woman in Red Increases Perceptions of Sexual Receptivity, Derogation, and Intentions to Mate Guard." So in two experiments, the first, they showed that women perceived another woman in red relative to a woman in white as more sexually receptive. A woman wearing red, if another woman sees her, they're likely to think that that woman wearing red is more sexually receptive. And then secondly, the second experiment, they found that women derogate the sexual fidelity of a woman in red compared to a picture of a woman in white. And then third, they are more likely to guard their partner, their romantic partner, from someone wearing a red shirt versus someone wearing a green shirt.
And it
So
doesn't
women-
matter the shape of the shirt or anything
Doesn't
like
matter.
that.
Changing the color of the shirt, women become more protective of their romantic space, saying, "Hussy, stay away from my man."
Gentlemen,
So
find
crazy.
this.
Just the color.
Gentlemen in the audience,
Lady
find
in
this
red.
story.
Right.
Go out, find this story. Go find this study. Print a copy of it, fold it up, put it in your wallet. If you're ever accused by anybody of judging a woman on her appearance, simply pull this out and say yes. And women do it too.
Yes, and women do it too. Yeah, it's just interesting that there is this this reaction that people have, and these studies are specifically looking at women and how women receive the color cue and how they react to it psychologically.
And men do this too, though. I mean, I recall a story we did very early on in TWIS where they checked sperm count of men after viewing pornography, and it was the lowest in watching any combination of gay pornography. But in heterosexual pornography, the sperm count skyrocketed because they were watching a competitor in action, as it were. So it's the same thing. Guys think the same way.
Well, I was going to kind of talk about that, except that when you think about other animals where, you know, males are sizing each other up based on physical characteristics, like their rack size, if they're a deer, their, you know, antler size, stuff like that, that they do, I mean, whenever there's sexual selection going on from either side, you size up your competition visually first before you do anything else. It's a visual sizing up. So, I mean, it makes sense. That's why we have visual differences, is so we can size each other up based on fitness, based on visual cues. And it's just the cues, I guess, are different in our society. And the red thing really blows my mind, that in today's day and age, the color red still means infidelity and loose morals. And
It's interesting, though. In this, there are studies that have shown that women perceive men surrounded by red as having a higher status, and men see women who wear red as being more interested sexually. So the question nobody has figured out yet is whether women who wear red actually intend to get more sex.
right.
That has not been
unintended-
discovered yet.
The unintended consequences of simply being a redhead.
Simply being a redhead.
Like, I don't know if that played in.
I don't know if that works.
I think I'd only be like intimidated by competition if there was somebody much funnier than me in a room. I think that's when I'm like, oh. I don't care how big somebody is or whatever. Like,
But you're funnier than I am.
somebody's got sharper wit than me. Then I'm like, ooh, I've been outmatched in this room.
It's good that you pay attention to so much more erudite signals.
Right?
Here, right. Exactly. It's good to know. Tell me about babies, Justin.
So this is sort of interesting. It says infants can tell the difference between sounds of all languages until about 8 months of age, when their brains start to focus only on the sounds that they hear around them. So it's pretty unclear how the transition occurs, but this is stating that interaction and caregivers' use of exaggerated parentese styles of speech seem to help. So your instinct to go like this, hello, hi, how are you, actually helps the child focus in on the words that you're saying and learn to repeat them. And in fact, it says most babies by 7 months, 7 months don't utter their first words, but are already activating the motor areas of the brain in which the speaking of the word will be enacted. So it's basically like they're doing the motor mirror neuron activity of speaking by watching you speak and learning how to say the words, even though they're not actually doing it yet. So this is just, of course, leading much, much, much more credibility to the whole, speak often to your children. Speak to them, speak to them, speak to them. Talk to babies, talk to babies. Yeah, so babies already can talk long before they begin to. They just choose not to.
They just choose not to do it. Well, it's probably a matter of they know what the words are, they know the sounds, but then getting the actual motor practice, getting all the muscles to work together.
Think about when you're learning a new language, comprehension always comes before your ability to speak.
Yeah.
Yeah, same thing here. And I've been doing this experiment recently. Again, third child. This one's 14 months old.
You've got quite the sample size going.
Right, and she's got pretty terrific comprehension. She knows the names of objects and discussing what we're going to do, and we can actually have a seemingly one-sided conversation where I'm doing the talking, but she's obviously comprehending at 14 months what I'm saying to her, and occasionally able to mimic the word. So yeah, of course babies are smart. They learn stuff really quickly, but the idea that this I didn't really realize is how much they are perhaps practicing speech without vocalizing.
Right.
That's pretty fascinating.
The brains are practicing it even without the vocalization.
Brains are modeling your speech as soon as 7 months old.
Nice. Well, babies are smart, but let's talk a little bit about how we can get a little bit more wisdom into our worlds. The wisdom of the crowds? The idea that you sample enough people with the answer to a question, you're going to get pretty close to the actual answer to the question. This has been fairly well shown time and time again with things like guessing the number of jelly beans in a jar, or guessing the length of a piece of rope. People are good at guessing this stuff when you let a lot of people guess and estimate. So that we have this idea that the crowd's wisdom is going to be kind of the best wisdom is going to come out of the crowd. But some neuroscientists have published a paper in physics. I think it's in the archive.org, and Gabriel Maderolas and Gonzalo de Polavieja at Cajal Institute in Madrid, Spain. They have been looking at this problem that happens. There are some people that seem to be biased by or influenced by the opinions of others, or by things that are happening around them, the answers of other people to the answer to the question. They get biased. And so what you end up having is a skew to the curve of the data, and you end up getting not really a very wise answer because it's biased overall because of these individuals who get biased. And they've found that there are some people who are very confident in their ideas and are less biased by others. And so they have created a model, a mathematical model that assumes each individual comes to an estimate based on two pieces of information. First, their own independent estimate of whatever the answer is, and second, an earlier combined, and then second, kind of a combined estimate that had been revealed to the group, which could be biased. And then each individual decides on their answer based on how much weighting they give to the information, which would be their own answer or everybody else's answer. And people who give a strong weighting to their own estimate tend to actually lead to overall, if you take only those confident individuals for your model, you end up getting a more accurate or wise response. And so they have determined that you got to get rid of biased thinkers in your crowd in order to have a wiser crowd. Somehow, You got to get rid of the bias to bring the wisdom. And it's confidence that should actually lead the crowd.
Yep.
Well,
Hmm.
well, I don't know if I would agree with that exactly, because
To be a leader, you need to be confident. The question is whether you're right or not.
yeah, I think if you're being
Right,
Well,
but the
well,
thing
first
is,
I-
it's not when we're talking about wisdom of the crowds, it doesn't matter necessarily what an individual's answer is, just that they're very confident in their own answer and they're not being biased by anybody else's information. So you don't have to be right, you have to be confident. And so if you have a whole bunch of people who are really confident in their own answers, you're going to end up with an average that's actually more right.
I think you'll end up with Congress. Bipartisan. Well, I mean, I wonder though. I mean, because of course, I want more details on the study than are provided, and what the questions actually were, and what the backgrounds of the confident people are in these answers. But I mean, I would say that if you're a mathematician and you're doing it something along the lines of the jelly beans in the jar, you may be a lot more confident than if you heard, okay, what's your answer? Okay, here's the average thing here's the average of everybody else's answer. Ooh, are you going to skew more to that or further away from that, right? If you're the mathmatician who's looked at the jar and done your calculation in your head, you're like, I'm not changing my mind. I like my answer better.
Right.
If you have some basis of fact or widely read enough about a subject to make an educated answer, you will be more confident. You should be more confident in it, and you should have a pretty good answer by yourself without the bias of the crowd. The question is, you know, leaving the questions aside of what they were asked, people can be really confident in some bad ideas. I don't know. I don't think confidence is the thing we should judge in this, but perhaps education can lead to a good deal of confidence. So I don't know. That's the thing.
What they're saying though is like
Yeah.
it's when we're looking at the wisdom of crowds though, it usually is an averaging, and you end up looking at the geometric mean or the median of a large number of responses, and so you get a curve, a sample. You know, I can't make a really nice curve with my hands, but if you have a curve with a peak in one place, that's your answer, right? To that, based on all of the answers that everyone gives. If your crowd is biased by some answers, your peak is going to be in a different place than it should be. And so it's this confidence in your own answer and not being biased that will lead to a more stable estimate.
I totally get that.
Unbiased estimate.
If the leading voice acts confident and they inspire other people to be confident, then there will be discussion and there will be discourse, as opposed to like, that's what they're saying, right? Is that if you act like you're unsure, then...
Yeah, what I think they're saying is that if you have one person, so like Justin's saying, if somebody is really confident but wrong, and then that one person, everybody else listens to them because they're confident, the whole thing's going to be skewed and biased toward that one really wrong person.
So everyone needs to have the confidence to speak their own opinion.
No, I don't think that's it either. I totally disagree with all these answers. I think what it means is, if you don't have an education in the subject you're forming an opinion on, you're going to be biased by information.
Possibly, yes.
If you have education and you have an understanding of a subject, it doesn't matter what the bias is. You know your answer is right. I think that's what it should tell us. Otherwise,
you're like, I think we're just gonna.
I think that's what it should
the way
say.
that we
I
want.
think that's what if people who are confident, and I'm assuming confident not just out of narcissism. Okay, now I'm assuming this is a confident answer out of, oh, this has to do with zoology. This has to do with something you would run at a zoo. So Blair's answer is not only going to be confident about it, but it's going to be somewhat accurate and be based on information. Where somebody could ask me, how many bananas should you feed a panda? And I'm going to I'll say 6. And then I find out that the crowd says it should be 3. I'm like, okay, well, maybe it's 4.
They'll do 4.
It's 0.
Right, of course. But you wouldn't back down from that, hearing that the crowd said 3, because you have actual information. You've educated yourself on this subject, right? So I think that's hopefully what we can take away from this. Not that you're going to be right if you're just confident. Because if that's the case,
Yeah.
I've always been right about everything.
No, yeah, it's not just, don't take away that you're going to be right if you're confident. That is not what
No,
we're
it's
taking
the
away.
crowd. If the crowd is not afraid, if each individual within a crowd is not afraid to speak their own opinion, right? Because most of the time,
Their own
that's what this
answer.
is trying to say, right? Is that most crowds, the right answer is in there. So if somebody's willing to support and argue for the correct answer is more likely to be expressed.
Yeah.
Well, that was the study, but
The
that's
abstract of the
I don't know if that's true.
Yeah, the abstract of the study here says that our results show that while a simple operation like the mean, median, or geometric mean of a group may not allow groups to make good estimations, a more complex operation taking into account individuality in the social dynamics can lead to a better collective intelligence. So from that, it just makes us wonder if there's some plan for these researchers for a social network, can we change something like the upvoting system that happens on Reddit or Dig or these sites that get lots of upvotes, where some stories really shouldn't get upvotes, but then they do because everybody votes on it, and so everybody else votes on it. Is there some way to actually take individuality into account and get rid of those people who are more biased by everyone else in the sampling? Anywho, any more stories, everyone? Quick ones?
Kiki, you've got some more.
I do have some more. A survey of plastics in the oceans has resulted in detailed maps of the distribution of these plastics in the gyres in all of the oceans. And as a result, the understanding that not all plastics entering the oceans are accounted for. So we have a big disconnect between what's going into the oceans and how much plastic they're actually finding. They have found little tiny particles of plastic, and they've found plastic in the stomachs of some of different fish species, but still we don't know where all the plastic goes. So that's a question that still remains to be answered. Additionally, dry ice, not water, is responsible for gully-like geological formations that appear to be the consequence of flowing liquid water on Mars. So we've seen these pictures from as far back as 2000, flowing canyons, gullies. Why is that dog barking? Anyway, okay, these gullies. And everyone was like, liquid water, there has to be liquid water. But they looked and they found that the seasons in which these formations appear and change are not seasons in which liquid water would be flowing. And what they think is happening is that there's sublimation of carbon dioxide. Frozen carbon dioxide is sublimating and allowing little particles of dirt to flow down like water.
Well, but then there was also the study that showed that there's salts that are present on Mars that can, as much as if you pour salt on an ice cube, can slightly melt the ice. That sort of can create this slushy effect for a little bit before things refreeze. It's probably a good combination, because that dry ice moving through sort of stirs up the soil, releases salts. Then you could get what seems like flowing water, but is sort of like a glacier, like it glides down.
Yeah. Yeah, gliding dry ice.
But not rivers. Not
rivers.
No
Rivers.
Martian lakes.
Nope. And finally, kudzu, the invasive plant that's all over the South. Kudzu. We have little, what are the rodents of unusual size like to eat kudzu?
Capybaras?
Capybaras, exactly. They enjoy eating kudzu. They're like one of the few animals that actually does. But it turns out that this invasive plant is not good for the environment. not only in the way that it just takes over everything and kills other plants and doesn't let the other ecosystems thrive, it also releases carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. Yeah. So it turns out that the way the kudzu works is it drops so much leaf litter and plant matter that the microbes it doesn't get the leaf litter and plant matter starts getting digested by microbes very rapidly outside of the ground, and the microbes then just let carbon dioxide off into the air, as opposed to it degrading and ending up being part of the leaf litter and eventually the soil and becoming part of the soil and putting the carbon dioxide from the plant matter into the soil. Additionally, it revs up the microbes so that any other stuff that, like old decaying pine plants, for example, that might be within the soil, also gets digested, because the microbes go, oh, we're excited, we're digesting stuff, and so they want to digest more, and so there's even more carbon dioxide that's actually taken out of the soil layer and being put into the atmosphere. Net release carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. Kudzu, devil plant.
Bummer.
Super bummer.
Right now, somewhere there's a kudzu plant listening to this show going, really? They're blaming us? Really?
That's right. They're blaming us, huh? So, you guys don't have any other stories?
Mm-mm.
I need to type. I'm going to mute myself very.
Okay.
As she's muted, there is one last story I had. The Iceman, Utsi. They did a broad spectrum DNA analysis of Utsi and found a pathogen, a bacterial community that creates periodontal disease. So, Iceman had tooth decay. Yeah. So the modern,
I could have guessed.
Right? I guess I'm a little
They didn't have
that was a modern
toothbrushes,
invention.
I
I thought
don't
teeth
think.
used to last forever, and it's only with the invention, the advent of sugar.
Yeah, that's why you have so many, Justin, is because you only need a few.
Only need a few what?
Yeah, teeth.
Oh.
Right.
You just have a bunch of extras hanging out for no reason.
Is that what it is? I do actually. I have extras.
does.
Like, my wisdom teeth came in, and I got to keep them.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
All right, everybody. I think we have done this show. Time for some shout outs. I would like to thank our Patreon donors: Kevin Donald Wesley Ballard, Paul Disney, Sam Winsier, John Ratnaswamy, Rudy Garcia, Bo Hartwig, Mark Jason Dozier, Matthew Litwin, Eric Knapp, Patrick Cohn, Kevin Parkin, Parachan, Jason Roberts, Shane and Tara Ginsberg, Brian Condren, Byron Lee, E.O., Bob Calder, Jared Lysette, Ulysses Adkins, Jake Jones, Sarah Chavis, Michael, Rod Miller, Stephen Surowiec, Layla Emir Sadeghi, Marshall Clark, Charlene Davidson Henry, Violated Gorilla, Don Kamarechka, Randy Mazuka, Ed Dyer, Tony Steele, Larry Garcia, Alex Wilson, Stephen B., Daryl Lambert, John H. Maloney, Jason Olds, Gordon Grant, James Paul West, Lauren Lang, Tuomas Maikanen, Alec Doty, Illuminlama, Nick Gradwell, Dan Rambo, Dougal Campbell, TMRO, John Specht, Miko Pakola, Craig Porter, Adam Mishkan, Jason Martin, Marjorie, Scott Lijewski, Philip Shane, Tyler Harrison, Ben Rothig, Columbo Ahmed, and Gary Swinsberg. Thank you for donating and supporting us on Patreon. And anyone else who is interested in supporting us on Patreon, you can go to patreon.com/thisweekinscience. Once again, we're going to be broadcasting live online at 8 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time, twist.org/live next week. You can watch and join our chat room. Do it. It's a fun time. But don't worry if you can't make it. You can find our past episodes at youtube.com/thisweekinscience or at twist.org. Don't forget to tell a friend about TWIS.
Cool.
Thank you, everybody, for listening. We hope you enjoyed the show. TWIS is also available as a podcast. Just Google This Week in Science in your iTunes directory. Or if you have a mobile device, you can find us there too as TWIS for Droid on the Android and TWIS, TWIS, in the Apple marketplace.
For more information on anything you've heard here today, show notes will be available on our website, www.twis.org. That's TWIS.org. You can also make comments and start conversations with the hosts and other listeners there as well.
Yes, or you can hit us up directly. Email Kirsten at thisweekinscience.com, Justin at twistminion@gmail.com, or Blair at blairbaz@twist.org. Just be sure to put twist, TWIS, somewhere in your subject line, or your email will be spam filtered into oblivion. You can also hit us up on the Twitter, where we are at Twist Science, at Dr. Kiki, at JacksonFly, and at Blair's Menagerie. We love your feedback. If there's a topic you would like us to cover or address, a suggestion for an interview, a haiku that came to you in the night, please let us know.
We'll be back here next week, and we hope you'll join us again for some more great science news.
And if you've learned anything from the show, remember,
It's all in your head.
This week in science. This week in science. This week in science. This week in science, it's the end of the world. So I'm setting up shop, got my banner unfurled. It says the scientist is in, I'm gonna sell my advice. Show them how to stop the robots with a simple device. I'll reverse global warming with a wave of my hand. And all it'll cost you is a couple of grand. 'Cause this week's science is coming your way. So everybody listen to what I say. I use the scientific method for all that it's worth, and I'll broadcast my opinion all over the earth. 'Cause it's This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science. 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 This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science. 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 I've got one disclaimer, and it shouldn't be news. That what I say may not represent your views, but I've done the calculations and I've got a plan. If you listen to the science, you may just better understand that we're not trying to threaten your philosophy. We're just trying to save the world from jeopardy. Jeopardy. And This Week in Science is coming your way. So everybody listen to everything we say. And if you use our method instead of rolling a die, we may rid the world of Toxoplasma. Gondii. 'Cause it's This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science. 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 This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science. 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 I've got a laundry list of items I want to address. From stopping global hunger to dredging Loch Ness. I'm trying to promote more rational thought, and I'll try to answer any question you've got. So how can I ever see the changes I seek when I can only set up shop 1 hour a week? This Week in Science is coming your way. You better just listen to what we say. And if you've learned anything from the words that we've said, then please just remember it's all in your head. 'Cause it's This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science. 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 This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science. 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 This Week in 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 Science.
And that is the end of another episode of This Week in Science. That is scary hippo. Didn't look like a hippo until you pulled it away from the camera.
Oh.
Hippo. Hippo. Is it like a rocking hippo? No, it's just on a pedestal.
No,
Hippo. I want a rocking chair hippo. That would
that'd
be
be pretty
great.
sweet.
That'd be pretty awesome. So I'm glad you're home, safe and sound.
Me too.
Your dad is glad you're home, safe and sound.
Yeah, definitely.
And you are jet lagged. What time is it to you right now?
Let's see. It's almost 10 p.m., which means it's about 8 a.m.
Oh, you should be just getting up.
Mm-hmm.
Uh-huh.
So I've been up all night, according to my brain.
back,
So
by
I
the
need to go to
way.
sleep.
Welcome the heck back.
Yeah. Yay! We missed you. We're glad that you didn't get blown up.
I'm glad also.
Yeah. Yeah. What is it with all these places? War zones.
So I was talking with one of the founding members of This Week in Science.
Yes.
I think he was founding-ish. I don't know, was he there right away or did he show up later? Ted?
No, it was me and Ted.
Okay, so yeah.
That was it. We started, me and Ted.
So I've been talking to Ted. I'm going to try to get Ted back on to do a show.
Cool.
I've been walking him through. Ted has been raising 3 children, and
Doesn't know how to use technology.
so
Yeah, he had issues with technology to begin with.
He's like, so how do I call into the show? I'm like, well, no, see, so what you need is a webcam and a microphone. He's like, what? I'm like, okay, so it's like a phone, except you have a movie picture going on. Moving picture happening at the same time. He's like, wow, that's changed since 1994. I'm like, yeah. Like, pornography, now free, which he found unbelievable. So I had to give him the update. Actually, I probably have it in here somewhere. The update of all the things that have changed since he sort of checked out.
Do you have a list?
Well, it was the things I was giving him the updates on. Cars don't fly, but they drive themselves now. Computers fit in your pocket, or no, payphones now fit in your pocket. Like actually, proxy wars between the U.S. and Russia, yeah, those are still going on.
Those are still happening, yeah.
Those we still have. Oh yeah, the space shuttle program was scrapped, but we now get to space via billionaire playboys. So all is good. Yeah, but he's working on. He's working on. He did make up some stuff in here.
You made stuff up, really?
Yeah, marriages must now be approved by lay clergy before licenses are issued. You know, you throw one in there. But yeah, he's working on getting some basic gear. I gave him the gear list that I've got, and so hopefully we'll get Ted on to bring a couple stories and do a show.
I would love that. That would be so fun. I would really love that.
Is there anybody in the chat room
That is awesome.
who remembers?
Probably Pamela
remembers
would.
the work of Mr. Dunning on This Week in Science.
That would have to go.
I know there's some I don't know, maybe they've gone to bed. Ed, are you out there still? Do you remember Ted from the early days? Who else has been here that long? It was the pre-podcast version of the show, so not most folks probably found the show well after.
Yeah, exactly. The podcast, yeah, it was podcast years have a different history than the pre-podcast. It's kind of like our pre-history. Yeah.
It's prehistoric TWIS.
So I need to run because I have a babysitter upstairs. Well, my friend Stacy, who very nicely decided, she said she would come over here and hang out so my husband could go out to a birthday party and I could do the show. So I need to relieve her from duties.
That's fine. I want to go to sleep.
And you are jet lagged. And so I would love to hang out and talk, but I really don't. And yeah, people in the chat room are talking about this new Malaysian airline incident, which is just inexcusable and just ridiculous. If you are not aware of it, a Malaysian Airlines is suffering a spate of bad luck, but this time it appears as if they were shot down by a land-to-air missile.
No, wait, land to air.
A missile, and it seems,
missile.
Yeah, that they were, and there are rumors afoot that it is pro-Russian Ukrainian separatists who.
So exceedingly unlikely. Commercial aircraft do not fly in the range for typical rebel-type missiles to be launched. That would have to be. They would have to be flying exceedingly low. Much more likely. This was shot down by a plane, most likely a Russian jet.
Well, they are going most likely. But there are now going to be investigations ongoing. But the thing here is that what they're trying to do, someone has done this to blame it on someone else. So one side of the whole situation over there, it was either a complete mess up where they're like, oh, we thought it was just a jet, and we thought it was a Russian jet. We launched to try and attack a Russian jet, whatever. Oops, it was a commercial plane. The likelihood of that kind of an accident is really slim because commercial planes don't look like other jets. They look very different, and they fly at like you said, Justin. They fly at a very different altitude with a different signal, a signature that can be read. And so, I don't know. The idea that I think with all the rumors flying around, it's likely that it's one side trying to pin it on another side, and and in the meantime, hundreds of people have died, and it's inexcusable. And this has got to stop.
Well, and to be, I don't know who I'd be being fair to because we don't know who shot it down or how it happened. And I understand you're a commercial airline. You try to pick the most efficient route between point A and point B to conserve fuel, to get the people there quickly. But doesn't this seem like if anybody just looked at a map?
Don't fly through a war zone.
What the hell? Where planes have just been shot down. No, ultimately, I think you're going to have to place, regardless of who shot it down, a good deal of responsibility on Malaysian Air for flying a commercial plane through that territory. Yeah. That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Yep.
Totally ridiculous. But in the meantime, our thoughts are with the families of the people who have died, and this is awful. There's a lot of awful stuff happening right now, and happy thoughts to everybody. I hope everybody has a wonderful, wonderful weekend. I hope everyone has sleep, Blair. I hope everyone is able to eat good food and have great times and think about science-y things for the foreseeable week until we come back.
Great.
Yeah. So everyone out there, thank you so much for joining us for TWIS tonight. Have a wonderful week. Thank you so much. And I'm sorry that I have to go, but I am stopping the broadcast.
Good night, everybody.
Good night. Love you.